Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, good
Pleasure.
morning to everyone.
Okay.
I'm from Kala. On behalf of Kala, welcoming you all for the webinar series 5. Today's speaker is Dr. H. Anil Kumar, a librarian, IIM, Ahmedabad. Dr. Anil Kumar has a doctoral degree in Library and Information Science from the MS University of Baroda, India, and the master's and bachelor degree in library science from Bangalore University. He secured gold medals in both master's and bachelor's programs, library and information science. He has nearly 3 decades of professional experience and renowned academic institutions like National Law School of India, University Bengaluru, British Library, Entrepreneurship Institute of India, and Nirma University, and also is one of the founding team member of the International Center for Technology Entrepreneurship, Ahmedabad, and is mentoring a few technology startups. Dr. Anil Kumar has been recipient of the Royal Society of Chemistry Librarian Choice Award for Lifetime Achievement on the occasion of the 4th RSC Librarian Appreciation Day on August 23rd, 2019, in addition to prestigious awards like the Best Librarian Award 2014 by Taylor and Francis, Outstanding Librarian Award 2012 by AIMS, Association of Indian Management Scholars, Asian Professional Award 2011 by Special Library Association USA, and the Best Librarian Award 2008 by Management and Libraries Network, ManLibNet India. He was invited under the prestigious International Visitor Program of the Department of State, United States of America in 2001. He has 9 papers, peer-reviewed journals, 6 books, 2 IIMA case studies, and several papers in books and conference to his credit. He is a member of the Asia Pacific Business School Librarian Group, member of Association of Information Science and Technology USA, life member of Indian Library Association, life member of ManLibNet, Management of Library Network, and life member of ADINet, Ahmedabad Library Network. Also, he has areas of professional interest are emerging technology and management trends in librarianship. Moreover, that is a human. See, very beginning when I called last just Monday, Dr. Anil Kumar, I'm so, oh, Krishnamurti, Egidira in Kannada, in local language. I'm looking for a speaker. Yes, I am ready. See, that is the he offered. I didn't ask any single. See, if I ask somebody, oh, I am busy, I have to see my diary and all the thing. Such a nice, such a simple man, such a global man today is going to give a lecture in our Kala webinar series. And also, friends, participants, I am asking you people, please in the chat box, mention your name for your e-certificate so that it is very easy to give a e-certificate. Okay. Now, with this short, brief introduction to Dr. Anil Kumar, over to Anil Kumar to deliver a lecture.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Krishnamurti. Generally, when you offer a lecture, you get a honorarium.
Yes.
So I got my honorarium before it started because my teacher Asundi spoke to me. Okay. His words of wisdom is more than anything for me. He's one of the teachers I admire. And I'm so glad that he's there in this talk. And with his permission, I will start my brief talk and thoughts. I become a little nervous if teachers are there in the audience, but I'll try my best to, cover what I thought I should share with all of you. Second reason is I'm honored to be on the platform of Kala because Kala has been a very good platform for me. It so happened that when I was doing my BLib and MLib, this association got revived with the efforts of Professor Asundi, and I got exposed to a number of stalwarts in the profession, which I think many of my juniors missed it. The type of learning I got, which I didn't realize that time, is the type of people who came to the platform of Kala to deliver their talks was just fantastic. We had the librarian of HMT, CMRI, IIM Bangalore, Chikmalaya, those times gave a talk on stock verification, which I still remember. It's 30 years back. Um, we had Bhattacharya from DRTC who came and gave some talk. We had one Devidas from UK who came and gave a talk. I mean, I can still remember. And the second thing Kala gave me is after my MLab, I was working with PES, like Subhash is there. I left that job after 6 months, and Professor Asundi's guidance, I joined a 3-month program there. They had an institute, and there was one lady, Sarvamangala. She was my
Yes.
teacher for 3 months, and my first exposure to computer formally was through that program. So whatever I achieved is, one is because of Bangalore University Department of Library Science, and second is because of this Karnataka Library Association, which got revived in '89. So I owe it a lot. Uh, Third is Krishnamurti is my senior, so I'm delighted that he called me and I was able to, make it for this talk. So let us directly go to the presentation. So when Krishnamurti called me, he said, "Let us have some talk which is interesting." He told, "Let us talk." So I suggested, "Why don't we talk about physical library?" Because everybody is now talking about digital libraries. They're talking of technologies. They're talking about virtual libraries and all that. So I thought, why don't we put our mind share together and look at whether libraries are required, whether there is a need, and whether there is a relevance for a physical library today. Uh, so library has two aspects to it. One is the physical aspect, which all of us have grown with historically, and globally it has become a phenomenon. Libraries even today are respected widely in the Western world also, and the physicality of it is also respected and honored. At the same time, the funding is going down, the facilities are going down, even in UK, US, if you look at it. Uh, but there are a number of studies which show that at times of downturn or economic, when it is going down, the economy, libraries have been saviors, even in the US. If you take 1930s Great Depression, most of the people without jobs used to go to the public libraries, right? Even in 2008, when the economic downturn was there, libraries actually helped people to, make their resumes, apply for jobs. They became hub of communities. So physicality of a library has been recognized. Therefore, the foundation like Gates, Carnegie Mellon, and all still fund and they recognize the need for a library. Now, at the same time, it doesn't mean that digital libraries are not important. Technology is the lifeline. You cannot survive without technology today. Whether it is library or any sector, technology has come to rule, and it is the core of any business or any work that you need to do. Now, the point is whether we should ignore physical library and invest more on technology, or whether we should invest more on physical library and try to balance with the technology part of it. Now, as a working librarian for last 30 years, we have been struggling with this, and the identity of a librarian is also actually in a way juxtaposed with this question or dilemma. The 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 dilemma that I have faced in the last 3 decades is whenever you talk to the management of any institution, they say people don't come to the library, so why do you want to invest on space? And generally, library means space, and space is not small. Libraries means huge. You look at good libraries, the space would be quite a bit of space. For example, our library is around 50,000 square feet, built in 1960s, right, and designed by a world-renowned architect. And if you say that, why is it that in those years we needed big libraries, and now you say that space is not required? They say everything has changed, technology has changed, people don't any longer come to the library. Everything you can access online, you can search online, you can discover online, you can read online. So what is the need of physical space? Let the library be there as a concept. Let us access everything online. So I thought, in my attempt to answer these questions, let us look at a case study of Vikram Sarabhai Library, where I'm working, of what has happened there. And it's a premier institution, not because I'm working there. It is historically one of the best business schools in this part of the world. It's globally respected business school. What part the library plays and what has happened there. And luckily, I was involved in the restoration of the library, which is a couple of years back, where we upgraded the library. And that was an opportunity for the management. And that was the right time when this question was posed. Why do you want to renovate a library? Out of 50,000 square feet, we were around 40,000 odd square feet. They said, let us reduce it and have a bookless library. Now, today, I'll go to the story later, but today this library is 50,000 square feet. We got additional 10,000 square feet physically. And the physical collection of the library, around 60 to 70% is housed in a different premises, which is another 30,000 square feet. So from 40,000 square feet, today we are around 80,000 square feet of library. And I don't think a management school will be foolish enough not to consider the pros and cons, the cost benefit and ROI and things like that. So let us go and see why a physical library is required and why did we do that in increasing, almost doubling the type of square feet we have. And you cannot just double it to any management unless you justify it. Unless there is some usage, you just can't get away with, just because you're a good librarian, you cannot get away with it. You have to show on the ground the results. Right? So with this, I thought before starting, I'll share an article which came in 2016, which is a very nice article saying libraries of the future are going to change in some unexpected ways. This was written by Weller in Business Insider. This was around 4 years back. And there are some 2-3 quotes which I thought we should look at. One is, in 50 years time, the business, in this article, they say libraries are poised to become all-in-one spaces for learning, consuming, sharing, creating, and experiencing, to the extent that enormous banks of data will allow people to check out brand new realities, whether that's scaling the Mount Everest or living out an afternoon as a dog. The key point here is the libraries are poised to become all-in-one spaces for learning, consuming, sharing, creating, and experience. Actually, this is the highlight of the article. And I very truly believe that this is what libraries were doing all along, and this is what libraries will be doing in the future. It is not just a space where books are displayed. It's a center of experience. There are activities happening. There is sharing happening. There is an experience that a person is gaining by just visiting a library. So this is the key why the physicality of a library is required, right? And to understand how libraries will change by mid-21st century, he says people need to understand what function they currently serve. Now, as librarians, my appeal is we should look at this very, very closely, and we should understand what we are doing as a function. If you want to understand the future of libraries, you want to understand or succeed in creating a good library or good services, we have to understand what function we are currently serving. And at their core, libraries in information age provide a public means of accessing knowledge. This is another key takeaway for all of us: a public means of accessing knowledge. You may have your own devices, you may have your own computers, but still libraries are going to be the future where the public can access knowledge without any hindrance. Democratic centers for accessing knowledge. And uh, even today, in the US, in some of the libraries, there are laptop circulation happening, borrowing of laptops in developed countries through libraries. So libraries will not only be circulating books, they'll be circulating technologies, because technology divide is very large. At our level, we think that mobile is a simple device that everybody has. But how many mobiles or laptops can be used by the people is a secondary question. For example, in the COVID lockdown, everybody said work at home, right? To work from home, you need a good net connection, you need a good laptop. The laptop should have a camera. There are so many issues that come with it. And this happened in our institute, IIM Ahmedabad, which we presume that all have laptop. It's a good institution, all people are paid well, but at least 30-40% didn't have. And there were key positions in the library where I need to depend on them for databases, online access, reference services, right? If they have to work from home, they need that technology, right? So the question is, libraries become spaces to even give access to technology, forget knowledge, right? And the other uh, highlight was the hallmark of future libraries will be hyperconnectivity. They will reflect our increasing reliance on social media, streaming content, and open source data. Libraries can drive technology, they can drive content. So the 3 points here are, it's not only it's a center for sharing, creating, experiencing. Second is they are means to access technology. Third is they are the spaces which will drive technology also as libraries. And I'm talking about physical library. I'm not talking about the digital library. Because to go and use, for example, a VR headset, you can't teach anybody virtually. You go to a library where the VR and experience it is something which will initiate you into the technology. I'm not saying you can't buy a Google Cardboard for 500 rupees, but what will you do with it unless you have content which is VR enabled, right? So libraries will play that role of creating content, of helping you to drive the technology. The second article which interested me was Carnegie Mellon's site, Carnegie Foundation. It says that can libraries save America? And look at the statement. American libraries have shown an amazing ability to reinvent themselves. And this article is of 2019. Even as they work quietly, diligently to transform lives while bringing together and strengthening communities they serve. But do we deserve them? Can we keep them? Right? These are the questions because they know it is useful, but are we actually ready to fund enough? Are we able to recruit enough people? Are we able to recruit and train and retain the good librarians? That is a question. And in that article, it says, what probably won't change that much are librarians and physical spaces they watch over. This is an article, Carnegie Foundation, which is funding a lot of libraries, right? They do a lot of strategic work and they put money where they think there are returns. He suspects that humans will always need some sort of a guide to make the foreign landscape more familiar. And this some sort of guide is a library. Whether humanity turns that job into one for artificial intelligence is another matter. That is the future. But as of today, becoming familiar with foreign landscape, that is like foreign technologies or foreign content, libraries are the spaces where you need to invest. At the heart of the library is the book, one of mankind's most imaginative and extraordinary inventions. From the clay tablets of Babylon to the illustrated manuscripts of medieval age, from printed leather-bound tomes to e-books of today, there are more than 5,000 years of humanity and its history for this insatiable desire to become immortal. Without organization, comparison, and systemization, and a structure to information, and most importantly, without professional librarians who are able to curate and understand that information, the blind will lead the blind. The need for professional librarians, the need for properly trained professional librarians who know their fundamentals correctly is the need of the hour. And the future of libraries is safe if we have this sort of a focus in delivering the services. So you may have content, you may have everything, the technology, everything in place. But if it is not, what do you say, indexed properly, metadata properly, if it is not, searchable or discoverable, it doesn't make any sense. That is why you go to Google, you get lakhs of results, but most of them are trash, right? Versus you go to a library discovery service, you get many of them which are good. Of course, discovery also has its own drawbacks, but if you compare to a Google search, a discovery search, it's far superior. And scholars need that, the learners need that. Google is okay for searching for restaurants and food and things like that, or for shopping. But for knowledge shopping, I think you need proper discovery services. And this not only happened to public libraries, you can see this is for UC Berkeley, University of California, some photographs. And this is not very new. This is also, I think, around 2017. You can look at the spaces on the right side photograph. You never found academic libraries giving such spaces to users where you can relax, stretch yourself, look at the nature, right? You had all formal furniture in libraries, academic libraries. And you can see workspaces on the left side. Working, so the all in one space which gives each user his or her requirement. It's actually the five laws of library science. Whatever Ranganathan said in 30s is applicable even today. So if you know what your user wants, that is what you have to give. Those principles still are valid. So even academic libraries started redesigning themselves. And now why I'm telling you all this or sharing is because this shows the importance of physicality. They are not fools. They're investing millions of dollars, right? They can just say that let us build a digital library and forget it. That doesn't happen. Why? Because there is a need for physical library. And these are examples, live examples are evidence of saying why physical libraries are required. This is, for example, a workspace, an incubation center in one of the libraries, Moffitt Library, where you can see the people are writing on the glasses, writing writable glass partitions. Instead of having whiteboards, you can scrub it up, and you can work in teams, you can collaborate. This is the place where, in the earlier article, the person was saying that these are spaces where people come and experience and share, right? So this is also one of the photographs of such a thing. Now, having said that, the question that struck me is what do we serve? Where are we working? What is our ecosystem as libraries? Whether it is an academic library, public library, or a special library. So, my very strong opinion is the only factor that will impact libraries is education. Whether it is a public library, special library, or academic library. The changes in a library are directly proportional to the changes in the education sector. Whatever is happening to education as a sector is actually, it is disruptive what is happening there. That is going to have a direct bearing on libraries, and it is already having that bearing. So we do not operate in isolation. Our education, if you look at education, you look at break it into different pieces, you will see that it is either admissions, start or entry of an education, the content of an education program, the pedagogy that is adopted, and the outcomes of education. All of these have changed now. 20, 30 years back, admission was a different process. Today, it is a totally different process. All you have to do 30 years back is go to the department, get the form, fill up the form, go and give it there, they manually scan it. Now, everything can be done online, right? Now, for admissions, because the numbers have gone up, there are entrance exams. For everybody, there is an entrance exam. Now, preparing for an entrance exam becomes very important. So the role of library is there. Or when the program starts, the students need different resources, how to get through this program, what does this program entail? The role of library is there. The content in the program, the pedagogy, the outcomes, all these have a direct bearing on libraries. If this change, anything changes here, the impact on the usage of library also changes. Similarly, now of late, the physical programs versus online programs versus blended programs are becoming order of the day. And blended programs, I think, are going to remain for a long time. Online programs will be there because of the ease of access to technology. The outreach is very huge compared to physical programs. But still, physical programs in education are, are there to stay, and they're very important. Whether you talk to teachers or to students, they prefer the physical presence in a classroom and interact with a teacher rather than an online one. And the point is, if you look at this COVID situation, most of the institutions are forced into online mode now. When all of a sudden there was a lockdown, uh, the most of the institutions that I know in higher education all started offering their classes online. They send the students home, and they also have their exams online now. Now the challenge is how do you have effective systems or platforms to offer online programs. Therefore, the product in this domain is going to gain a lot of traction, offering programs, offering exams online, offering assessment programs online. All this will. Now, in that context, what is it that the students want from a library? So, your digital format of collection becomes very important here when it is an online program. At the same time, when there is a blended program, the physicality of attending the program on the campus has a direct bearing on the usage of the library on the campus, right? So all I'm saying is libraries will be affected by what is happening in the education sector as such, and technology is a major disruptive factor in technology. The major disruption is through the technologies which is affecting whether it is admission, whether it is pedagogy, whether it is content, whether it is delivery, whatever. And now the focus is whether you are to look at short term or long term in education. And the benefits that you get from education, whether you want to go for a short-term program or a long-term program. And the other thing that is happening in education is disappearing of subject boundaries. The disciplines are itself actually the boundaries which are drawn by human beings. Now people are saying it doesn't make sense. For example, if you take design education, in design education, you need liberal arts, you need technology, you need science, you need engineering, everything, right? You need communication, you need management. Similarly, if you are studying, say, for example, management as a discipline, management is not far away from technology. Unless you understand technology, you will not be able to manage industries or companies or anything. So your understanding of technology, understanding of sciences. So therefore, I feel even understanding of libraries should be a compulsory subject in post-graduation. Understanding how libraries operate, what are the classification systems, what are the principles of cataloging. This is useful for knowledge classification, and that is the basis for all subjects actually, right? For example, philosophy should be a part of most of the subjects, which is missing, which was there earlier. For example, if you are doing a doctoral program a few decades back, philosophy was one of the core subjects. Today it has disappeared from doctoral programs. Slowly it is now trying to come back after these revisions and reforms and all that. And the fourth factor which is becoming important is there is no idea of what future jobs will look like, right? This is the major disruption happening in education, and this also has a direct bearing on use of libraries, right? Earlier, people used to come and look at what is happening in the classroom and connected material they wanted. Today, they want material which is innovative, creative, outside what the teacher has taught, because the jobs are like that. It has become very, very different. Nobody thought that delivering food will be a big job, or delivering groceries would be a big job. Today, those are the hot areas. For example, cab aggregators. So nobody knows what is going to happen. Today, everybody is focusing on data analytics. So mathematics, statistics, which is ignored for such a lot of time, is going to become a hot area now, right? But the problem is our education system planning is so bad that now we have no good graduates in mathematics and statistics. Everybody went to engineering. Everybody goes to medicine. Now somebody said design, so everybody is now going to design. So we as a nation, we should have some strategy and looking at the future, what type of things are going to happen. And that's a different question. We can talk about it later. But majorly the ecosystem in which libraries are working are education, and education itself is in a disruptive mode now. And I saw the formats are changing physical to online to hybrid. And you can now interestingly have complete education, or you can have modular education, or you can take only badges like Mozilla badges. You take only certain programs, stitch together the badges and get a whole sort of certificate for the program. And you can have regular education, you can have continuous education on the job, pre-job, before job you can have education, on the job you can have education. You can have general, you can have specialization, you can have micro specialization. Need not be that you have to go for a full program to attend a micro specialization. For example, data analytics, you have a 1 week program, you have a 6 months program, you have a 1 year program, but it is specialized only in data analytics. You need not go to management for a 2 year program to do data analytics, something like that. And of course, the major thing that has happened is the democratization of education, where everything was offered as a mass. This is the program, whoever is interested, come and take it, to a micro, very specialized program, to now it is an individualized program. You may be a library science student, you want to do analytics, you can do some courses, you want to do philosophy, you can do a couple of courses. So it is totally individualized to your interest, right? Similarly, you can do a global program sitting in Bangalore or in Ahmedabad or Delhi or Bombay. You can do a program of Stanford or whichever university, versus a local program where you can do both, right? And it is moving from teacher centric to learner centric, the model of education. And the other key which is very important for India is teaching versus research. From focusing on teaching and whether we should focus on research, that is a dilemma. I think both have to be are important. And more the research, the more the long-term sustainability. The more focus on teaching, the more important for creating next generation learners, which is also important. But research is something we have not focused on these many years. We should focus on it much more now. Now, in this context, how do you connect to your users, library users, when education is becoming so disruptive? So you have, for example, your users are now, earlier were captive. Somebody enters an institution, they are your user. They were captive for you. Now it is scattered because you have students who are, for example, distance learning. The students are all over somewhere, an online program. They're everywhere and they are remote. They are not even on your campus, right? Uh, and it is totally technology driven. So a student in some other state who is attending a program, by the way, we have a lot of learners who are online now. IIM Ahmedabad is offering online programs which are short term, which are long term. We have a 1 year program also. Now, handling those users is a big challenge because they have not seen the library. And in fact, because of COVID, even the inauguration was done online. The orientation of the library was also done online. So it was a totally virtual experience for the students. And a person who has not used the library as much, because unfortunately in India, up to graduation, you don't have good libraries. In PG, there is a chance that you get into a good library. Only if you go into a PhD, you will end up seeing a good library, right? So people who don't even know what is classification, how to issue return a book, how to search for a e-book, right? So it's a totally different challenge. How do you connect to them? And physical interactions to digital interactions to again physical interactions, right? These three things are bound together, whether there is a e-learner or a in-house learner physically available there. And most of the users prefer the systems to be designed human independent. They don't want to call anybody and ask anybody. They need everything to be digital self-help sort of thing. For example, if you have a query, they want to go onto the chat box, put a query, and they expect an answer on the chat box. They are not bothered who is answering. They're bothered with the answer, not with who is answering. And they don't want that human dependence in many cases, unless it's a very detailed and specific research query. And integration of all offerings into a single platform. Whatever the library offers, they don't want to go to a periodical and search for periodical. They don't want to go to a book and search for a book. They don't want to go to a database to search. So they need one sort of Google, which will search everything, whether it is books, whether it is databases, whether it is articles, whether it is open access literature, reports. That integration has to, that is what they're looking for, especially the user who is remotely scattered somewhere. And they don't have much attention span, and they don't have tolerance for time delay. The quickness of reply is what they want. They come on the chat, they put up a question. If you don't answer in 2-3 minutes, they're off. Then you don't have that person there. And there is reduced time for searching. Therefore, the staff have to be trained well. And the reference direction is moving from simple directional queries to reference queries to research intense queries. So these three questions that every librarian needs to ask, and whatever I am saying is applicable even in the digital domain. So it's not necessarily in the physical domain. Who are your users? Why are they users? Why they are coming to you? And what are they coming for? What are they using? These three questions will be able to help us in designing your physical library. So I just gave an example from IIM Ahmedabad point of view. Say, if you say who are your users? So I segment the undergraduates, the postgraduates, the PhD, the faculty. You go on listing it to make a simple sort of a matrix. Then you say why? Why are they coming? Are they coming for class study? Are they coming for assignment, dissertation review, training, personal? What is the purpose? Why they are coming to the library? Why do they think that library is important for them? This may be some of the things, right? And these are questions and answers I have generated from my experience and interacting with the users. So one can research actually and go into the depth of this and develop a model of ROI if you know this exactly. What do they use? What is the content that is relevant to them? Now you have primary, secondary, tertiary, you have facts, commentaries, data, information, textbooks, reference books. I have just listed down the type of content that is available. Now, if you want to develop a strategy or a matrix, so you should know who is coming. So for example, in the first segment, you have postgraduate students. Second is why they are coming. Are they coming for a class assignment, for their research, for their internship? What is the purpose, right? And third is what do they use? Are they using databases? Are they using magazines? Are they using newspapers or only books? If you can identify this, and this is not necessary that for this segment, this is going to be stable. It can change over a period of time. During summer internship, their purpose is summer internship. During exams, they'll come to study for exams. Then the content may change, the purpose may change, right? Therefore, basically listing this out, I don't want to be heavy on the strategy. Just listing this out will help you understand. You just list it out for your library, you will be able to understand. And the other important question you have to ask is, why do users come to the library? Are they coming for books? If they come for books, are they coming to read, to issue, or to return, or to browse, or self-update, search, discover for what? If it is periodically, similarly for what? So if you have a list, And it is very important to also list spaces. Are they coming to use just your space? There are many users who come, they don't issue it on anything. They just come to the library just to spend time there. So where do they sit? What do they use in the library? What facilities they do use? If you know this, for example, toilets, it looks very funny, but there are students who prefer coming to the library because of the good standard of toilets. We have a lot of international programs, and our housekeeping is world class. Right, very speak and span. We have 4 bathrooms, everything well equipped. Now the foreign students, for them it is very critical, those facilities. So what I'm saying is, you need to understand why they are coming to the library, and do you need to invest in that? Is it required? And if it is required, if they are their core users, then you have to invest there. You have to look at it, right? And there are some people who come to the library to meet other people. They come to meet, right? So you can understand, so you can design your services around that. The most other important question is, why do your users not come to the library, right? So is it because everything is in digital format, or is it because of internet and Google? They think that they can get everything there, and they perceive it is not user friendly. Because some people, and I'm sorry to share, in some libraries they don't go because of the staff. The staff are very rude and they don't answer properly. There is no proper service. They don't go there. They think that, why should I go to the library? And there is a disconnect between the exams and placements and what the library has. For example, in a research library or in a PG library, you don't expect to keep 50 copies of books. You will have 1 or 2, but for them, for the exam, they need only the textbook if it is spoon fed, right? So they think there is a disconnect. Library aake kya karna hai, right? And they think it does not make a difference. Some of the people say that I can afford on my own the spaces, the content access. I have enough, whatever at my disposal to use it. And teachers do not inspire us to come to the library, and a lack of reading habit. These are some of the reasons I thought people think that they do not come to the library because of these reasons. What is happening? So the strategies that libraries to answer these questions is rapid technology adoption, shift the staff focus from referral to reference. This is one thing I thought I should spend some time is, the future of libraries is in your ability to service the information needs of your users. And today the information needs of users are very specific and in-depth sort of thing, and it is research based. And the future of libraries depends on how good your staff is in answering these queries, in actually addressing the research queries of the faculty. And it is not very simple, it's a very complicated process, because you need to have some domain knowledge to answer research queries. And somehow over a period of time, the library professionals are losing that reference service skills. uh, I remember reading about SR Ranganathan when he was teaching. He used to teach maths, and there are some, I think, 8 or 9 students in his class, if I'm not right, if I'm not wrong. And he used to suggest a different textbook for each student, because the learning style of every student was different, right? This is the type of approach one has to have, that every user has a different need, and your understanding of the domain has to be so good that you should know what the user needs. And even though the users are from the same domain of mathematics, Dr. SRR used to actually know which textbook will suit which user. So his librarianship had started before he became a librarian. So this research service is something which is going to stay for the future. And if libraries have to survive, especially academic libraries, their research facilitation skills have to go up a lot. And this is very, very important. And third is shifting your focus from routine to automated or outsourced services, so that anything like, for example, housekeeping, for example, shelf reading, security, instead of having your own staff, it is better to have outsourced staff. Then you have, as I told you, staff training on research is very important. People are now investing a lot, and management don't mind, because if your staff are more skilled, you get better productivity. And the benchmarking now, everybody says, is look at Harvard, look at Stanford. Why are you benchmark with local libraries? Mass service to individualized customization. Libraries used to give services like, for example, issue return is a mass service. Individualized customization is a research service. As for your project, what you require is exactly given. and physical upgradation so that people are more, the ambience is more inviting. Similarly, the strategies for collection development, it is also now complicated. You have open and paid collections, you have online and physical. You can borrow or you can buy. Earlier, you had to only buy. Now you can also borrow or subscribe for a temporary period of time. For example, in periodicals, you need not subscribe to the periodical. You can only buy an article on demand. And maybe you want to buy complete or you want to part buy. You want to go for packages, you want to go for articles, you want to go for journals. So you could do any sort of mix and match, and that actually complicates the collection development strategy. The librarians need to be aware of that. And services, the strategy basically is the user is the focus. There is something that the user needs and something that they want, so you have to be clear about these two things. And from a support, you have to become a partner with the user. You should not just be a supporting person. And of course, digital and physical, both services are key. And interestingly, both drive each other. You can use digital platforms to drive physical usage, and you can use physical platform to drive digital usage. So the trends are basically technology is the way forward. Do not write away the print. The print collections are still there. You can see this photography where it was, I think, about Wimbledon. It was a finals going on, and a boy was sitting and reading a book. He had exams next day, and everybody, shouting at a Wimbledon match. What is he doing reading a book? So print is still there, and it will stay. Content will be hybrid. Content buying, which was the main role for a librarian, is now to indexing and to searching and to discovery. We have to develop those skill sets and technologies. Content conduits, we were just pushing the content, we were pipelines to content creators or partners. That is the role that, or the trend that libraries professionals have to look at. And the content forum with a focus on user experience. So you should have content, but the user experience is the key. The focus has to be on how the user is going to enjoy it. So coming to a small, brief about the Vikram Sarabhai Library. As I said earlier, this is around 50,000 square feet, and we have another 30,000 which is there for stocking. And to tell you why, so we have around 250,000 physical volumes of books and reports and bound volumes and all that. In the debate of having print versus non-print, it was decided that print is important after a long debate with faculty and students and all that. And we decided that maybe multiple copies we can do away with, but we cannot do away with the print as such. We have to save space. There's no doubt about it. So let us have a policy that in future probably we can add as many ebooks as possible. But for archival or whatever purposes, the print books which are there, we have to keep it and service it. And they are being used also. It is not that they're not being used. So we decided that 130,000 odd books, we have kept it in an offsite, which is just 500 meters from where we are in the main library. So anybody wants, and it's all cataloged, it will tell you the location. The person can put a hold. Within an hour or so, one of the staff gets the book and it is issued to the person. So we needed that offsite storage. And so the other thing is that we wanted to envisage it as a hybrid library. So we wanted to focus on physical and digital both. And the second key thing that we focused on is everybody wants the library for a different purpose. As I was telling you, when you develop a matrix, a postgraduate student has a different use, a PhD student has a different use or purpose, a faculty has a different use, an academic associate has a different purpose or use. So we wanted to inculcate or embed different spaces for different purposes, and decrease in space for print collections. Therefore, we created offsite storage. We also thought that we should have flexible furniture so that the layout can be flexible. So we don't decide what the user wants. The user will decide how to sit and how to form the furniture. Some spaces we created like that. And showcasing of it, institutional knowledge, whether it is physical or digital, we thought both is very important. Generally, we thought of physical, we talk of only digital institutional repositories. We thought that there should be some way of promoting it in the physical format also. And more importantly, it was decided that we should showcase a technology-rich environment, because library is a place where there are a number of visitors who come, international, national, important academic visitors, industry visitors, placement firms. So we thought that once you walk into the library, you also get a feel of the institution. What you have adopted in the library, your culture, also shows what type of an institution you are. So we purposely wanted to also have that. So the new look library, if you look at it, one floor we thought should be dedicated to collaboration. So people can come, talk, shout, discuss, share. So one floor was done for that. We also have space for silent study, which the PhD scholars generally wanted. And even some postgraduate students said that we need silence in the library. We don't want everything to be halagula. So we created individual carols, which was there earlier, and reading hall. The other suggestion we had and we tried and we achieved is to get more natural light and artificial lighting in spaces where there is no natural light. We went by the Indian standard of lux levels that are required in different corners. And surprisingly, my learning was none of the architect knew that there is a standard for lighting in libraries. So for example, circulation counter has a different standard. Cataloging and processing, technical processing section needs a different lux level. The staff need a different lux level. So it was a learning. This entire project was a great learning for me, and a reduced space for physical collection, increased space for users. So we had a capacity, I think around 300 users. We went up to 463 seating capacity there, and flexible and comfortable furniture. So the shelves you can see were totally changed the look of the library. This was one thing because we had a large collection and they were all in the gray color shelves, which was dingy and dark. So we said, let us go for pure white so that it reflects light and you can see properly also. So this is some of the photographs I thought. This is the collaboration room and this is flexi furniture. People can make it into a 6-seater, into a single seater, into a 3-seater, into a 2-seater, whatever they want. And the glass panels you see here are the 5 collaboration rooms that have been done. This is one of the collaboration room. You can see the photographs below. So one is formal, one is informal. Like that, we have 5 rooms. White shelves, disabled friendly. If you're on a wheelchair, you can move anywhere throughout the library, including the toilets. You have a separate children's area because we have now married students also coming for our executive programs. Wi-Fi connecting and charging facilities. We had a digital wall created, RFID system. The entire collection was RFIDs, and there's self-issue written kiosk now. And we also wanted to showcase technology of VR. So with the help of TCS, which had funded the entire restoration project, we got a VR app developed. If you wear that VR app, the VR gear, you can actually search for books through the catalog. It is linked to that. And you can go through topical displays and you can reserve the books also in that. And you interact with the device through voice. It's a new technology. This is one of the floors where there is shelf and there is a place to collaborate. This is also flexi furniture. So people can use it any way they want. These are some parts where individuals can sit silently without any disturbance. You have carols. This is a silent zone basically. And the other interesting thing is feedback from students is they need to see books around them. That gives an ambience for them to study, especially the serious readers. So if you have everything just as a hall and you put up only furniture, it will not make sense. You need to have shelves, you need to see books, and it brings a different energy to the room. This is near the entrance actually. This entire shelf you see towards the wall are actually faculty publications of books and journal articles. So creating a showcase of institutional knowledge in a physical format. So whenever a faculty walks into the library with guests, he takes them there and shows them their own publication. It's a way of marketing and pulling in the user to your own strategy. And they are so excited that they are very actively contributing to this, their own publications, right? And who doesn't like to see their own publications there? And this is the digital wall on the left side. This is again flexi furniture. People can sit here. These are the opaque terminals. Basically, they are tablets, Surface, Microsoft Surface tablets. You can search, browse the net. You can search for books. This is a newspaper stand. This is our counter, which is totally changed. And you can see a lot of space. Though we have increased seating space, we still have abundant space, which feels very inviting, open spaces and flexible. This is RFID kiosk here, 2 of them. And then as I told you, these are the faculty publications. Now, one is creating a library, and 2, I just wanted to also show you some of the usage statistics of the library. Okay. How do I do this. Okay. Now you can see the statistics. KLMDC library is the library before the restoration. We shifted to a temporary premises in May 2016 for 2 years. We came back in 2018 December, and during the lockdown, I thought just to give you an idea of how it looks like. The issue return, if you see, when we came back, slightly increased from 30 to 36, 34 to 40, 31 to 36. Similarly, reference services you can see 13 to 17, chat increase. We just introduced chat that time. And you can look at this huge walk-in, this is per day. We had 309 walk-ins in the pre-restored library. Now in the new library, we have 576 walk-ins. That means in a day, we are 24 by 7, 576 walk-ins happen. And this is an average. So the peak sometimes crosses 1200 to 1300. Okay. Similarly, during the COVID lockdown, once we close the library and we operate only for 5 days, 10 to 6 p.m., you can see because there are no students also, because it's a unnatural factor which one should not consider. But still, there are 43 walk-ins even today. We were wondering why anybody will come during COVID, but still there are 43. And you look at the issue return is not much of a difference. It's 20, 68, and 16 issue return and renew. And look at the reference, it has more than almost doubled, 32. Chat has gone up. The walk-ins has reduced. But look at the website visits, the institutional repository, and the OPAC. So the digital visits have gone up enormously, right? I just wanted to make a point that library is closed or not, physically people are there to use the library. This is a shot of the library from outside. This is by Louis Kahn. So why a physical library is required? Because you want to display your institutional knowledge, faculty publications, you have student publications. We have makerspace. Makerspace is we have a 3D printing facility. So people can come and print. Now people may ask what is the purpose of having that in a library? The purpose is to nurture innovation and entrepreneurship. So this was an entrepreneurship project with a student which we did. It is very popular. People come and print objects now. We had a human library sort of event where people actually become books and they're issued for 20 minutes. A very interesting thing. And this can be possible only physically. You can't do it digitally. And we have something called as a free books corner. So anybody can donate books. They're displayed there, and anybody can take away the books. No questions are asked about it. And this is quite popular. I think we must have done around 1,000 odd books already for the last few months. And today's returns is something interesting, where any book that is returned is displayed in a separate shelf, and it is like marketing a book which is already used, bestseller sort of thing, and it's quite popular. People again pick it up. Since they think that somebody who has taken it, they must have found it useful. So this is something that is already validated, something like that. The other important thing in institutions for a library is entrepreneurship. You can promote entrepreneurship in libraries, through libraries. As I told you, the Makerspace was an entrepreneurship project of the institute. We have dedicated a notice board in the library for entrepreneurship. So all successful entrepreneurs, their profiles are put up. And whatever programs they are doing in entrepreneurship, we have dedicated that sort of display for only entrepreneurship. And we also have topical displays. Like, for example, now you will have a COVID display. If there is a Republic Day or Independence Day, you will have books on Indian freedom struggle. Similarly, on Women's Day, you will have women authors, so on and so forth. So making it as a happening place. The physicality is very important. And most importantly, which I always tell the other librarians is, look at it as a technology showcase, whether it is a virtual reality or a video wall, RFID. Kibo is a reader for visually impaired. So this actually device converts text into voice, and this is by an Indian company, a very good company, quite affordable, I think around 30,000 rupees or something. And it has Indian languages, Kibo. And also showcasing Koha, DSpace, Coral for other libraries to come and see. And the other interesting thing, which may not be directly relevant for an institution, but for libraries, is library science interns coming on their own. So we had a couple of students who came on their own, spent their money to stay, and we gave them training for a month in different sections free of cost. right? Like that, now we are getting demand. So however much ever capacity we have, we try to help them. So they come and they take care of their expenses. We give them free training. Another small thing I was thinking is about the QR code. Now, housekeeping, I was telling you about these washrooms and cleanliness and all is the key, right, for a good library, for the ambience of the library. What we have done is we have put up QR codes in every washroom. If there is anything that there is no soap or no tissue paper or it is not clean, you have to only scan that QR code on your mobile and a message goes to the housekeeping that this room requires attention. This was again on the suggestion of a staff member that we did it. So physically, libraries are basically required. They are relevant. They are the center of educational activities. They are a place to nurture lifelong learning skills. It can become an incubation center in itself. Whether it is technology, entrepreneurship, is arts, sciences. Why not we give up display boards or walls in the library to certain students who deserve it for their paintings, for their poems, for their essays, whatever that they want to showcase. And they are places which give you the ambience to study. They are places to collaborate. You can access the state of the art technology. You can showcase your institutional knowledge that is generated with there, and also technology showcasing. I think it's very strong points that I wanted to make in the need for a physical library. COVID is a temporary thing. I'm talking about a long-term future, sustainable future, where human beings require this, and digitally will not be able to address these needs. And just by showing you some photographs towards the end of the presentation, this is, I think, in Jakarta. These are libraries where a person is going, and it's a mobile library. Indonesia, this is in Indonesia. This person goes and distributes to children, comics and all. And this is on a bike, there is on a horse. I collected this from the web. These are libraries on a boat. So libraries are always there. They will be there in the future also. This is, I think, in Malaysia, um, where under the flyover there is a school, there is a library here, and there is a teacher or a librarian who is teaching, right? When there is a need, you can always innovate. Space is available. It requires the will of the decision makers or policy makers and the librarians to get together. Look at the bright faces. These are all places under that flyover. Nobody could have thought that such an active learning space could be created below a flyover in the open. So before I end, I thought I'll also give you an Indian example. This is in Gandhinagar in Gujarat, where there is a crematorium, and there is a hall there, and these are students who have come together to prepare for their exams here. And it has become so successful that now every batch who clears that exam or doesn't clear or whatever, they leave their material there and go away. There is no librarian, there is no somebody to manage. The students themselves, they have chairs, they put up, the material is left by their seniors, and it is very, very popular. And what better silent space than a crematorium? Thank you very much, and I invite questions. Yeah, can you hear me, Subhash? Hello?
Yes. Yes, Anil.
Yeah, please.
Wonderful.
Thank you, sir.
In fact, you are redefining the physical library where you have to provide the